a warm welcome to Power News, your window to the power sector. I'm Juhi Rajput. Let's begin with the top stories. PMO accepts CIL's plan for lower supply guarantee. Lenders turn away power companies, say CIL fuel pacts not bankable. NTPC scraps ₹350 crore coal import tender. PMO bats for high import duty on power equipment. BHEL commissions 500 megawatt unit at NTPC's Vindhyachal project. Pay up or face cuts, says DVC to Delhi Discoms. India expands fastest on solar energy. Lanco to exit hydropower business. And question mark over NHPC's investments worth ₹7,800 crore. Well, those were the top stories of the week. Let's move to our next segment. In India, on one hand, people are facing severe power cuts of 8 to 16 hours all across the country, and many rural areas are going without electricity for days together. And on the other, thousands of hydro projects are stuck due to people agitation, which, if commissioned, could be best suited to meet the peaking power demand. Here is a detailed report by our correspondent.
At present, country is facing severe coal and gas crisis, and power situation is deteriorating day by day. In absence of firm fuel supply agreement, coal and gas projects can't come up. India has almost 150,000 megawatt hydro potential, but only 40,000 megawatt has been harnessed so far. There is enough hydro potential which can meet the growing power demand. Hydro could be useful for peak power demand and meeting the grid frequency and discipline.
Unless we keep our grid code intact and we allow the generator to run within the grid code frequencies, there will be huge loss on the generators. Damage to the power plants will be much higher and maintenance cost will be much higher. But technically it is not possible today because our hydro share has gone down and we don't have gas power projects. The only solution to this country is to accelerate the hydropower plants construction quickly and complete it completely as the earliest, so that we can supply power to the country at proper frequency and proper voltage.
But in past 5-year plans, hydro capacity addition have been very poor. In 11th plan, country just added 5,544 megawatt against targeted 15,627 megawatt.
Taking our lessons from the 11th plan and going forward in the 12th plan, we've already put in place processes and procedures to help us implement the projects better. But not only the preparation of project reports, but also implementation of these projects is very complex. And while it is getting implemented, several issues come up and they have to be dealt with in their own time, which is why the delay occurs.
Presently, many hydropower projects are stuck due to people agitation and environmental issues. NTPC runs 600 megawatt Lohari Nag Pala project on the Bhagirathi river was stopped. Government spent about ₹1,000 crore on this project. Central government scrapped 2 dams, Bhairav Ghati 381 megawatt and Pala Maneri 480 megawatt. NHPC's 2000 megawatt Lower Subhansiri hydroelectric project is facing agitation. NHPC is facing revenue loss in terms of delay per day, that is of ₹6 crore.
Controversy which is going on the Lower Subhansiri project, we have tried to address that how the flood will be controlled by the construction of this dam project. You see, dam projects is a must. I mean, it is a myth that the dam projects become a devastation for the downstream. No. Today the technology and whatever investigations we do, it has advanced so much. There should be no fear with the people that whatever the engineering structure is being constructed, it is always fail safe.
6 hydropower projects including Vishnugarh, People Kothi, Him Jyoti and Alaknanda were projected to supply electricity by 2012. These projects were started after all necessary clearances from central and state governments were received. All of them have been stopped, displacing thousands of workers. Environmentalists and Mahatmas claim that dams on river Ganga would pollute its water and is a threat to its existence.
This is not true at all, that these are being built on Ganga and they will pollute the Ganga. Probably that is not true at all, and we need to educate the public. The pollution is not there at all. What are we doing? The water is flowing we are temporarily storing for a small time and only the excess water was flowing out. So, storage per se does not cause pollution. So, we should in fact make the people aware as to what are the benefits of hydro.
Anti-dam lobbyists, environmentalists and Mahatmas are protesting the dam construction work, but ultimately the people are suffering. They are deprived of basic amenities such as electricity and jobs to sustain their livelihood.
So far the development has taken place in the hydro sector. Broadly we have taken strike a balance in between the environmental need of the project and the area and the development taken together. If you see the economic condition of the local people after development of the project, it is enormous. You cannot, it is all beyond measurable. The development, the schools, the institutions, the facilities like health care and all these, all connectivity, electricity to the neighboring villages and everywhere, it is enormous.
In absence of hydro project, other infrastructure development works are also held up. Now many people from the remote villages where hydro projects are stopped are insisting upon the government to restart these projects. More than 10,000 small and large scale industries in Uttarakhand are on the verge of closure due to lack of power supply.
The situation has gone from bad to worst, and as a result of this, the power position is getting deteriorated day by day. And if we are not going to work on war footing, and we are not going to support the utilities and the PSUs, the power position will get deteriorated further. And if somebody is talking that improvement will come in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, it is a lie, big lie. Implementation of the projects should be done on war footing basis.
Hydropower projects are contributing towards the state as well as national demand for energy. Any development-based activity along with its benefits have some negative effects as well. But it largely depends on our way of planning, level of coordination among projects authorities, local government, host communities and R&D institutions and involvement of these at different stages. If we plan it properly, we could achieve far-reaching positive results from these hydroelectric projects. Competition Commission of India on Thursday fined 11 cement companies rupees 6,000 crore for cartelization in a case dating to 2007-8. Ultratech, Ambuja Cements, ACC, India Cement, Binani Cement, JK Cement, Madras Cement and JP Cement are among those companies that have been fined for their role in creating and running a cement pricing cartel. Guilty companies will be forced to pay 50% of their profits for the financial year 2010-11. Competition Commission has ordered to deposit the penalty amounts within 90 days. To talk in detail, we've been joined by Mr. D.L. Desai, Chairman, Indian Construction Bulletin Committee, and Mr. O.P. Dua, Senior Advocate. First of all, I'd like to ask that how do you see the judgment of Competition Commission?
This is the decision of the Commission that the production has been controlled. The dispatches have been controlled. So, therefore, in a cartel, 3 things are required. One is that there should be identity of prices, and that has been found to be so. Second is that they interact amongst themselves and decide the price. And third is the competition should be affected. They have found in all cases all the 3 ingredients of a cartel are satisfied. Therefore, the Commission has come to a conclusion that they have violated the provisions of the Act.
The case goes back to 2007-8 when the Builders Association of India had alleged that the retail prices fixed by 11 members of Cement Manufacturers Association were almost similar. Do you feel that the cement companies have not utilized the available capacity so as to reduce supplies and raise prices in times of higher demand?
Over the years, growth in the construction sector is going down. And the figures were quoted from National Account of Statistics or Central Statistical Organization. And how is it that cement industry is claiming there is huge demand? So we looked into it and then we found out that cement industry went on increasing the installed capacity, but they deliberately underutilized the capacity and then created a shortage. And under the guise of shortage, they went on increasing the rate. Cement Manufacturer Association meeting was providing a platform where under the guise of high-powered committee meeting, top bosses of the respective companies meet, and thereafter the price has increases. Shockingly, Holcim, who is controlling ACC and Ambuja Cement, they have resigned from membership of Cement Manufacturer Association on the ground that construction industry feels that there is a cartel and CMA is instrumental, so we are resigning from CMA.
At least 39 companies were investigated for alleged cartelization in this case. And as data shows, in past 2 years, industry saw cement price hikes several times. In many states, the increments were almost 50%. Do you feel these hikes were artificially created by cement manufacturers?
Price of cement, where transport plays a very important role. So, price cannot be similar for all cement companies. It is bound to be different. But if you look to their sale price, that moves in a very narrow band. That leads to the conclusion that there has to be some pre-arrangement among cement majors. Otherwise, this type of system or this type of result cannot arrive.
How much has cement cartelization affected the construction sector and its anticipated growth, as cement is the most crucial input in construction and infrastructure industry?
You see, in 2004-2005, the price of cement per bag was 150 rupees. Now in March 2011, it was 300. So you can judge the increase in price, how many times it has increased. So it has affected the building industry the most, because they are the persons who use the cement. And you see, at a point of time when contracts are entered, they are entered at the current price. But if they increase abnormally, then the builder suffers the loss. He cannot recover it from the parties. So therefore, it has affected the industry, and real industry has felt the pinch of it.
Well, cement companies have expressed indignation and disappointment over the Competition Commission of India's order penalizing them for manipulating the cement market, and are planning to file an appeal against this order. What do you have to say?
Broadly, all cement companies' net profit is more than 10% of the turnover. So what could happen? That they will continue to indulge in cartel, and ultimately this is going to go to Supreme Court ultimately. And with our judicial system, when the case will be finally decided, it may be 8 years, 10 years from henceforth, because the next stage will be appellate tribunal, and after appellate tribunal it will be Supreme Court. So we are trying to impress upon the authorities, or we will try to impress upon appellate tribunal, that if this order is to be implemented, then while admitting the appeal, appellate tribunal should take into account this stark reality, that this 8%, they would not mind paying 8% and continue to indulge in the cartel because it suits them. So there is a need to go ahead with this Competition Commission's order and at least tell cement companies to deposit the money with Competition Commission. If that is not done, as I told you earlier, the cartel will continue.
Thanks Mr. Desai and Mr. Dua for joining us in this show. Welcome back. METEC India's 12th five-year plan target that envisages a doubling of infrastructure spending from $500 billion to $1 trillion is indeed a daunting task in the current economic environment, especially considering at least 50% is expected to come from the private sector. Economies in the Asian region, including India, are predicted to have moderate growth, partly due to sluggish recovery forecast for major industrial economies. But even for this moderated growth to be realized, massive investment in infrastructure are inescapable. To talk in this in detail, we have with us Mr. Amitabh Mundra, Director, Simplex Infrastructure. Mr. Mundra, there is a glaring infrastructure deficit in India, which policymakers intend to address by facilitating public and private investment worth $1 trillion in the 12th five-year plan. Seeing the present economic condition, does it look achievable?
I think the necessity is there, but I don't think it will happen because there are too many implementation hurdles in the way, and I believe it's a good wish list to have. But in terms of implementation, it's going to be a very uphill task. So I'm a little skeptical about this getting implemented.
What are the major challenges in making PPP model a success?
I think the third P needs a lot of work. I think when you say partnership, what does it mean? How do you define partnership? What kind of partnership is it? Is it fair weather partnership? Or is it a partnership that will weather storms? I think those are the questions which need to be addressed. I don't see PP and the third P actually coming into a partnership mode. It's more like a tender-led business. You tender out a particular concession as you would do a tender for any EPC project. That you don't call partnership. And so therefore, I think I have a big question mark on calling these projects PPP projects. They are at best a BOT project, or the different various forms, and so therefore this whole connotation of PPP is slightly under a question mark because of the third P.
Private participants advocate that to enhance the private participation, risk should be distributed and roles and responsibilities and policies should also be clearly defined between the private sector and government. What do you have to say?
I think as long as both sides are okay with creation of infrastructure and wealth creation and asset creation in the process, the interests are aligned. Of late, I am seeing that the interests are not aligned because there is a lot of other interest creeping into these kind of projects, which are going beyond asset creation, infrastructure creation and wealth creation as a process. And so therefore, you know, if the both participants' interests are not aligned to a singular goal of achieving these three objectives, you are going to fall into these kind of problems. And if you want to achieve some kind of a social upliftment through these schemes, again that's another queer in the pitch. So I think various interests have to come together for a common minimum program, as to say, and then you can absolutely define the partnership that is you're trying to create. As I said before, I think the partnership P is the biggest problem.
Well, land acquisition has become the most crucial component for infrastructure projects. Many projects are held up and cost has increased many folds. Government is bringing a revised land acquisition bill. How effective would be the new bill in addressing the land acquisition problem?
I think we should first differentiate between land acquisition for housing, which has a profit motive, and land acquisition for infrastructure, which is a more social service situation. So I think there has to be a land bill which accommodates for profiteering out of housing and for social requirements or infrastructure requirements, which are essential services requirements, has to be treated differently. The land required in infrastructure is largely dependent on government bringing out the schemes first, and so the feasibility of that acquisition has to be done by the person who initiates the scheme. It is not like a housing scheme or something like that, where a private enterprise goes, identifies the land and then acquires it for housing purposes. The scheme in infra case is mooted by the government, envisaged by the government, and so therefore land acquisition there is not in control of private players in this regard. And so therefore there is a larger responsibility in terms of the initiator of the scheme to look at how the land will get acquired. So there is a big differentiation in infra and housing land acquisition. I think the tainted part is the housing part, and unfortunately as the government tends to do, one size fits all. I think those policies will not fit infra.
Thanks, Mr. Mundra, for joining us in the show. In Company Focus segment, today we'll talk about JCB India. Construction equipment manufacturer JCB India has launched an all-new JCB 3DX backhoe loader, a machine that has a loader at one end and an excavator at the other. The benefits that this generation machine provides to its customers are immense, with 20% lower fuel consumption in excavation, which will result in fuel saving worth rupees 2.25 lakhs per year. It has the best engine in the construction equipment industry and a spacious, comfortable and livable cabin. Here is a report by our correspondent Tulika Rana.
JCB, India's largest manufacturer of construction equipment, launched the all-new JCB 3DX backhoe loader, a new machine that will radically change the landscape of the construction industry in India. This launch follows the breakthrough innovative concept of backhoe loader that JCB introduced in India in 1980.
The machine has been designed, manufactured with feedback from our customers and others who've been associated with construction equipment, with several features that will ensure that maximum benefits accrue to our customers.
This extremely versatile earth-moving and construction machine with a loader at one end and an excavator at the other found great utility at construction sites all across India. With the launch of the new 3DX backhoe loader, JCB plans to strengthen its share of the backhoe loader market in India and extend its reach even further to the developing rural market.
It gives a fuel saving of about 15 to 20% higher than any other engine and saves approximately 2,20,000 rupees approximately for the customer each year.
JCB has invested heavily in upgrading its manufacturing facilities and research and development, keeping it at the cutting edge of innovation. JCB's 3DX backhoe loader, the new generation machine, is powered by the JCB EcoMax engine, which is a purpose-built in-house 76 HP engine that is big on fuel saving and high on performance with 16-valve effort. It has a twin ram steering for easy steerability. It has also been providing with new brake linkage to ease the braking effort by the operator and which ultimately leads to effective braking and reduced fatigue while braking. The machine has been strengthened and a more reliable rear axle gives trouble-free life. The machine has robust kingpin design and has a new transmission JCB for better service access, which enables the operator to easily carry out daily maintenance checks.
It's a very, very robust machine with a very robust filtration system, especially for the engine. So the steel structures are extremely robust, amongst the best in the world, because we utilize our equipment for at least double the number of hours every month or every year than in other parts of the world. And our fuel conditions and our air conditions are also far more severe. And therefore, the filtration system is extremely, extremely sound.
JCB India has developed and expanded through launching revolutionary products, and today in India, JCB has sold over 1,50,000 machines, and out of every 2 construction equipment sold in India, 1 is JCB.
First 25,000 machines took 24 years. The second 25,000 machines took 4 years. And the next 25,000 machines took less than 4 years.
JCB designs and develops the products on the basis of needs and requirements of customers as well as growing infrastructure of the country. With the valued inputs from the customer, JCB will continue to innovate and produce equipments and services to best suit the need of their customers. JCB machines are high-quality products at par with the world's best and built to withstand extreme vagaries of climate while delivering their optimum performance. JCB India believes in extraordinary customer satisfaction, which is the principal force guiding all JCB initiatives and endeavors.
JCB machines are high-quality products at par with the world's best and built to withstand extreme vagaries of climate while delivering their optimum performance. JCB India believes in extraordinary customer satisfaction and is the principal force guiding all JCB initiatives and endeavors. With this, we come to an end of this edition of Power News. Keep sending us your suggestions and views at powernews@znetwork.com or call us on 011-405-60701. Do join us next week for more news and updates. Till then, goodbye and take care.